always available post the office hour if you want to share with any members of your team. So this recording is always shareable with any members of your team. And if you didn't get it, just reach out to me, Charles, on the actual meeting invite, and I'll send it over to you. But my name is Charles Rayburn. I'm a customer success advocate here at ServiceNow, and I meet with several of you customers today, as well as some customers who may be on the phone that I may not know about. The goal is during these calls, we have for the first 15, 20, even 30 minutes, however long the presenter wants to go, to talk about the particular topic that you raised as something you wanted to hear about during these types of sessions, and then post that presentation to ask any key questions of that subject matter expert, as well as the customers on the call can talk about their use cases to kind of get other ideas from other customers that may have a higher level maturity in the area that we're discussing, or just in general to bounce ideas off of each other. So this is meant to be an interactive format as well. So definitely feel free to ask any questions. If you're listening to this recording and you have questions, feel free to reply back to me, Charles, and I'll try to get answers for you. But the goal of these series is just to help you as customers be more successful in these topics that you raise with us. If there are particular topics you want to hear more about, you can always reach out to your customer success advocate who's assigned, and you know who they are, and let them know what topics that we may not be covering you want to hear about. So here in Q4, all of the topics we've been talking about are raised topics that you guys have expressed interest in. So having said that, I have Scott Wallace here. He is an amazing resource by far, and some of you may have already talked with him. He's going to be covering the Ideation portal, innovation management perspective. So I'm going to turn the baton over to you. There you go, Scott.
Thank you, Charles. Welcome, everybody. If you don't know my name from being on a previous calls, I'm part of the ITBM product organization called Product Success, the outbound side of the equation. And I'm delighted to be here today to talk about innovation. And I kind of use that term specifically instead of idea because the concept's kind of moved beyond just say a traditional idea as we saw in the past, idea to demand kind of concept to innovation. And I'll kind of walk through this process. I'll give you a quick demo of it too, give you some insights into some new things that are in Paris. What I'll be showing you is Paris-based. So with that, I just want to make sure that I have only small little items that might be a little forward-looking, so it really doesn't apply a lot, but just so quickly highlighting here for you where we are currently. Paris is out, of course. We're in the final sprints at Quebec, so it's pretty much in the oven baked. Should be begin some heavy duty testing here in November and getting ready for Q1. We're doing a lot of planning around Rome. So you think about what we're incorporating, what we could put in the product, and et cetera. It's more like Rome. Of course, San Diego and Tokyo, and I think they've even named further out. So that's where we are today. I did want to mention the fact that store apps down here, right? So this is something I want to call out. So this is a Paris themes. If you haven't seen the slide before, it's just kind of the themes that came out for Paris for ITBM. Adoption, portfolio, and scaling agile. So I want to make mention of these boxes. These boxes are store releases. We're moving more and more to store releases. Store releases are usually chewed up with the family release, the following family release, sometimes maybe a following after that. But as an example, Paris came out in September. In June, let's see, in May, we did scenario planning and executive dashboard for strategic spend. In June, we released the Idea Manager dashboard, which I'll show you today. And mobile timesheets came out in August. I think technically mobile timesheets was even scheduled for Rome. So there's a lot of stuff being pushed to the store. And that's why I want to make mention of it is when you think about more of our traditional every family release every 6 months, you'll see a lot of activity in the store. So be sure to check that out. And this stuff I'm going to talk about in particular today, the Idea Manager, that is a store app. Right? So, and it's a list of what they currently are. You'll see mobile timesheets is out there, collaboration, which is, it's actually when it's coming up pretty soon. We have a Slack integration coming. We have a Teams integration coming. Strategic spend scenario already out. Idea Manager I'm going to talk about today. Virtual agents new, this came out too, pretty cool. So this is just one little small section of the ITBM store apps. There's one to talk about today. So you think about innovation, like the intake process and what it's all about. So I guess the question basically is, why do you need to consider innovation? Well, this is one of my favorite slides because there's also a lot of disruption happening right now. It's disruption everywhere. Of course, COVID has thrown an enormous wrench into everyone's business operating plans and processes and everything. but it's just happening. It's happening faster. So how do you manage it? Well, you need to find a way to solve for rapid change, market disruption, digital, agile, transformations, things like that. So inside ServiceNow, kind of more of our product strategy, we're looking at three main pillars that support that, right? So managing outcomes, adapting your planning and scaling work, all right? But all this points to innovation, like feed that pipeline of innovation. It's not just an idea that the IT department gets. It can be broader than that. And actually that's what's ultimately for innovation. I think longer term, we could see the innovation engine be used by marketing departments, things like that, who want to run campaigns, things like that. There's some pretty big, lofty goals in what they want to do with the whole innovation engine. That's more, again, more long-term, right? But the idea is how to solve for rapid change. You're always going to go after, where can I get new ideas? Let's go to your people who contribute ideas. So when you look at the overall stack of what we have, so we've got this layer at the top that's about strategy and vision. We got a layer in the middle, and this is kind of where some of this is built, some of it will be built. Alignment, which is a whole portfolio, like alignment to the business strategy, right? Manage those outcomes and deliver on the vision. And then how you execute. You can execute an agile, hybrid, or project, any method you want. Of course, off the side over here, the whole purpose is this gives you visibility throughout the entire solution. Now, this is a piece I want to focus on as the intake. So this intake, how does intake come into affecting what portfolio is? Maybe it's affecting exactly execution in terms of stories, things like that, right? Things I want to mention down here. So when you think about the unified backlog, how you work, so we have a lot of customers who are already adopting the Slack integration. It's pretty cool. There's a Teams integration coming out probably in a couple months. I think it's slated for Rome, but it might be ahead of that. We, of course, you have Microsoft Project. You have already a Jira integration and an ADO integration. So if you want to run safe with Azure DevOps or something, that's already out there as a spoke, right? Of course, you have all the platform stuff sitting at the top. This is kind of a large scale stack, but when I get to it, it's kind of like, well, what's this innovation engine over here? What's the intake process look like? How do you capture it? It's not just one idea going to IT. It's broader than that. So if you haven't seen this already, there's a new release out in community. You can see community. You can see it on our docs page. There's a lot of places. It's CSDM 3.0. And I don't want to spend time going into it because that's really the architecture for all of what I'm going to show you here, but you might want to make note of it. It's called CSDM 3.0. And it's a large way to look at this entire ITX framework, how all this comes together. And this is a build slide, and there's a lot going on in it. And I'll get to a point, I'll show you where I'm really after here. But when you think about ITBM, it's kind of the green thing, right? We've got the innovation feeding what's happening. Then you've got the whole DevOps cycle going on for team. You got Agile, and you got app teams out there, and the whole continuous cycle, right? Then you have service management, right? Operations management, asset management down here. You have the service portal for an intake. You have security. You've got kind of like, this is the whole picture of everything, how it kind of as a map fits together, right? But I want to focus in on is this map here. As you think about innovation and intake, traditionally, the old idea, I guess I'd say, the old way of looking at it was idea created a demand. The idea was very simple, very basic. A lot of customers didn't really use it. They just kind of went to demand as an intake, and it went right into investments, created a project out of it, and you probably executed in waterfall. That's kind of the old model. You think about the new model, right? Innovation should be able to spin off a lot of things. Right? It's kind of a linear way to look at activity. So with Paris, again, the innovation portal, or idea portal technically as they call it, was introduced in New York. But with Paris, we're going to have some additional features with it, and I'll explain what that is. So New York is where it started, and we're at Paris at this point. So with Paris, what we're getting is an idea, besides becoming a demand, of course, traditional, but an idea can spin off another record. So say, for instance, you don't want to run it through a demand pipeline. There's really isn't an investment planning process that needs to take place. This is right to an agile process. You could have an idea spin off a story, spin off a safe, an epic, things like that, right? If you're going through the more traditional, again, of course, you have the idea as the green arrow shows here, clearly can go to demand, and you can follow that process, of course. But as you notice here, if I take idea to demand, and it's in demand, and we're going through an investment process, a review of it and all, Well, what if at that point, traditionally, you would say a demand kicks off a project? Well, now we have the ability in Paris to have a demand kick off an epic, right? A safe epic. So depending on how your business is, how you do evaluations on scale and sizing, how your agile organization is managed, an idea could go right to a story or an epic over here. It also could come out of the demand pipeline depending on how you do funding. Do you fund the agile side of the house? Do you fund it with investments off strategies? It really depends on how you do in kind of this funding concept, this funding models. So also we added in Paris machine learning. So you'll see that when I go in the demo, it'll give you a visual of machines saying, hey, listen, this is already in there. There's something like this. Are you sure you're not creating the same demand or same idea, right? And I guess this probably goes back to my future statement. There is plans at some point, I don't know the exact release yet, but there is plans to introduce mobile. Like we have mobile timesheets and we have mobile project status and there's a lot of mobile activity. I think eventually we're gonna add in innovation to the mobile side too, right? So when you look at the idea, I'll show you this actually in a demo here, but I mean, really it's a platform to engage employees for the next big idea. And that kind of goes to the concept of disruption. What is the next big idea? Yeah, it could be an enhancement, fix this thing or things like that. But what are the next big ideas? Whether you're running product or project or whatever kind of organization running, what's the next big thing? It's always nice to have that wide net. Allows people to contribute. Voting and commenting, of course, is the key thing that's really different in the portal here is you can vote and comment, you can follow, you can track. It's, social media kind of thing. All right, single source of ideas for the organization. Doesn't matter how broad it is. You can use categories to just determine where they get routed. Basically, it's a pipeline for vetting ideas, right? And again, if you tag yourself and say, hey, I want to follow, it keeps the creator of the idea informed of the progress. So, hey, it's being considered, it's in the backlog. By the way, if you haven't seen it or haven't used it, I encourage you to, because this is our route. We deployed this as ServiceNow ourselves. So if you go to community and look at Idea Portal, that is what we use for all of our intake for customers. So if you have an idea, please be sure to go in, and I think our categories like project portfolio management, there's a lot of categories, and I think we're gonna have to do some cleanup. There's probably too many categories, but please use it. That is how our product organizations receive feedback from customers, besides myself, of course, and organizations like myself that we work with, but is something specific, like I would like this. And then you of course have voting, right? I don't have time to do it today, but I will tell you what it is. If I showed you, I always rank on descending order on most voted. The most voted idea that's being considered, but I don't think it'll ever go anywhere because it's kind of a competitive issue. The number one idea in our portal right now today is publicly sharing the roadmap, which is kind of, I guess, why I'm here to some degree. I get to share the roadmap with you, but people want to see it publicly. And of course, I think from a competitive standpoint, they don't want to do that. But I see that count go way up. It's in the hundreds now, 400, 500 maybe comments. Anyway, so you have the ability to comment, feedback, attachments, all that kind of work activity, right? So when you think about an idea portal, there's an idea that comes in, you get to triage the idea. And this could be an idea manager, and I'll show you the idea manager portal. When you triage the idea, you have to make a decision. Is this small? Let's run it right into enhancement, into a story, into an epic. By the way, enhancement's not technically there yet, although you can configure it. I'm hoping in the near future, we're gonna have enhancement as another record creator. But you can create a story in epic. You may say, hey, listen, it's a little larger. I need to run it into a demand. Right, so it's kind of a decision point for you as an organization. Does it require investments? Does it require approvals? Things like that. If it does require investment, it might be demand. You also have, of course, demand is also fed from manually. You can create one, of course, if you have permissions. APM is a feed if you're doing app personalization, things like that. You may have business capabilities that say bring up a new app and turn down an app. ITSM, sometimes service requests. I've seen service requests come in to become demands, although you got to be careful with that one. That can get unruly. And as you keep going here, it's like, okay, I got the business investment. Now I'm doing prioritization. At some point, you have an approved demand, and you can act on the approved demand. And again, this is the model. I said this is what's new here, right? You get kind of a way to bifurcate. You can say, hey, I want to create different types of follow-on records. You get to demand. Same thing with demand. Like you get a demand, it gets approved. Okay, now what do I do? Well, you'd spin off a project, but you can spin off an epic or a feature, right? You can also say, well, what about maybe it requires more continuous and it's around the agile cycle. So you're going to create an epic, or even technically, if you want to get into the project to product model, you may even create a product out of it, right? So a demand, it isn't just a one way now, like, hey, demand creates an enhancement or creates a project. You can actually spin off, by the way, epic here and feature, safe is included. So it's Scrum or safe, other one, right? Converted to a program, right? There's some new. Again, what this does, it takes the handcuffs off of the kind of, like I said, this linear model of one record creates the next, creates the next. It allows you, depending on how your business process is, to manage your intake and ideation process, right? And the idea manager, I'll go through this too, but this is basically a way to look at and manage, analyze, look at the trends. You can write from this, you can click in, you can drill into it, you can view history and trending and things like that. Right, this is kind of what it looks like. I'll get into this directly myself. So this is a model here I want to go through in terms of kind of the idea portal. I'll show you a portal. We'll look at how that works. We'll look at the idea manager, and I'll follow kind of 3 examples. I'll create a story. I'll create traditional waterfall project, and then I'll do via demand into a safe epic. Right? Is that good? Makes sense? Any questions before I jump to the next one?
Hey, Scott, there was one quick question.
Yeah.
Are all the items that you just showed in the FedRAMP store as well?
They should be, I guess is the best way to say it. So I know FedRAMP is a little off cycle from the normal cycle, right? There's things that have to get into Fed. So my expectation is whatever is in out of the box standard product will make the Fed cycle, of course. It's just usually a little bit later than, say, Paris, right? But yes, I would expect all this goes into, because there isn't a separate code tree, so to speak, for standard, standard product and then a Fed cycle. No, we got a single branch when we release. I just know it takes a little longer, I think, as I recall, to get to the FedRAMP, but it should be there, yes.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with, we looked at the flow here, right? So I don't have to jump back to PowerPoint. I'll put the flow in here. So we're going to look at this flow and say, okay, let's run this, take the first example here. So what I want to do is I want to go into the portal first, all right, and give you a concept of what the portal looks like. So if I want to create an idea, integrate, right? So as I begin to talk or type here, it's going to start to find related items. Like someone's already put an integrate HR portal with training application. So as you start to type, it's going to try to find stuff that's already there, right? So let's just say I'm going to integrate SAP something, right? And once I say that, okay, and you might, of course, put in some information, you might attach some stuff, what's your concept, what's your idea, what's the visual, etc. Key thing you're going to do here is you're going to select a category. A category is a way to provide visibility for whoever's kind of managing this pipe. This is a very basic structure of, hey, it's a compliance project or new product development process. These can be nested, by the way. So you may have, say, under new product development, you may have several portfolios or several product lines underneath it, like select product line A or product line B. They're not nested here, but you can create them nested, so you can kind of work your way down. And I knew on our community site, you'll see that too. The key thing is to pick something, right? And you create, like it's this simple, right? Create. And once it's created, depending on your rights and so forth, this is where you can go back and look at it, contribute, comment. You can create comments. Other people can comment. You can't vote yourself up or down, of course, but someone else can vote up or down. So this I want to show you just a quick example of it's simple to create, right? So once you create some things as an idea, say manager, and you want to spend time here versus say the idea manager dashboard, and we'll kind of go back and forth between the two so I show you kind of how they work. It's kind of an internal app view of things. But if I want to stay in the portal view here, I can look at things by states. So it's been submitted, need information. This is where the idea manager can kind of disposition and manage what they're looking at. You can also do it by category. Like I want to see all categories. Like I own a category. I'm only interested in all ideas for my particular category that I own. You can also look at ranking by most voted, descending. Here's my examples. I have 1, 2, and 3 as my examples here. So I faked some comments and voting here, right? And so I can look at any state. I'm going to look at Patir. I'm just going to come up with 3, which is, under review is where I've moved them to. So let's go into one of them, like the first example I have here. And this is, an action that looked like the idea manager has managed and looked at and classified it as new product development. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to open up the form and platform. So out of the box, we have a few less forms, a few less fields on here, but I've added few because it kind of makes sense in terms of what you might need as you kind of work it down the pattern. And this is how you kind of manage it. Again, this is up to you. You can easily configurable. You can add your own fields and what you need to manage. So I've added in, like, maybe there's a business unit that's related. So this is an HR one. Okay, it's HR. So I don't know if there's a department in there. I could pick a department. There's no department set up for HR. But this belongs to a business application. This is a little bit more the advanced model. But if you know that it belongs to an application as an owner of it, like if you're the owner of this work stream and this is my idea, or I'm managing the idea for whoever created it, I can tell if it belongs to an application. If you're even more advanced using capabilities, you pick a capability it belongs to. This way you can look at, hey, intake all the way down to, well, it belongs to an application, it belongs to this capability. And I even added collaborators because sometimes you want to know other people that are tracking and managing something, right? So now that I've done this, again, we could be looking at comments, people comment back and forth, et cetera, right? But at some point, you need to disposition this. So at this point, as a DIA manager, I could be making comments, reviewing back and forth. Now let's go back to the idea manager here, right? This is a visual, it's a dashboard of ideas. And again, you can do it either way. This way, say for instance, I'm a DIA manager and I'm looking at by category, right? And I want to look at the categories and I know there's particular categories I manage. I could select those categories. So another way of looking at it, say for instance, the portal view, you can do this on a dashboard view. But I know that these three here is an example I'm working with as my use case here. I click on those three, here they are. Here's the idea itself in form. So you're looking at the same thing as you're looking over here, right? It kind of depends how you want to manage. You can use them both. This is an in-form, in-application view, right? So asking the same stuff, right? Collaborators, departments, things like that. I kind of prefer this route here because it makes things pretty simple. So I'm going to route this one first, and I'll take a disposition on this one. This is the one we're going to create a Scrum story. So how you do that, and this is what I want to show you. This kind of goes back to that model I talked about here. It says an idea is going to go right into our story, like unit number 1 here. So at some point you're ready to move this, and you're saying, I need to create a task now. What's the task going to be? All right. So from here, this is what we offer up currently in platform: demand, project, epic, story, a safe epic, safe feature for safe story. I have a lot of requests for customers to say, well, where's enhancement? That's how I usually get that. It's pretty common. I'm hoping I can get enhancement added in a future release here. It's not very difficult for you to add it yourself in configuration because it's just a record creator. So you could actually do it yourself in platform here, just add a record creator and add it to the list view. So here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a story. And by creating a story, I'm basically taking this idea and moving it right to a story. As soon as I do that, I can see that one, it's been moved to in backlog. So as a submitter of it, you would have known that, hey, someone's taken my idea and moved it to a story. Someone's acting on it. Here's the actual story itself, right? So if I was right from the same view, depending on permissions, I can see it. I can also go in and look at the story list, depending if I'm a story manager or a Scrum, depends what your role is here. But this is basically, here's the creation of the story, the standard story form, right? So we basically took an idea, boom, off to a story. Again, this could be put into sprints and depending on how your agile process is. So this one has been moved, right? So there's our first one. Let's see, so I'm gonna go back to most voted, and you'll see this one has been moved to in backlog. So let's take number 2. This one I set up as an example. It's gonna go to a demand and then it's gonna do a project. And probably because the scale and size, like it's a compliance project, it's probably pretty big, it might need some investments to manage it, et cetera, right? I linked it to an application, said, hey, this is a compliance project related to CRM, managing recalls and audits. I just picked a couple of things that I thought might be logical, but again, same concept here, right? This time I'm going to create a demand. I create a demand here. Right? So there's my demand. Right? And if I go into a demand, the actual demand form here, again, this is the form view. I could be using the normal demand application to, but they're largely the same view. So here it's the same thing, submitted, all this information. You could be start dates, and something else I want to mention here too, does that kind of go along? Remember an idea we had, ML, machine learning, looking for things that are common. We also have this in demand too. So it could be, there looks like someone else has already set this. Well, here it is, it's the same project, right? But we have a little machine learning added into demand now. And actually a project in Paris, demand and project both have machine learning in them now. But so here, what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, this is going to become, what I say, it's going to be an epic. What was my model? I forgot. Yeah, is the waterfall going to be an epic, right? Is that what I said? Yeah. So again, what I want to show you here is that from here, I can create an epic, right? And so effectively what I'm doing is from a demand that may be reverse inquiry, and this really kind of goes back to how you do in funding. Maybe your funding strategy is for Agile and you wouldn't run it through a demand. Or, hey, I need cost plans and I need all this normal cost management information down here, running it through an investment decision-making process, right? So I'm going to create from an epic here, and as soon as I hit, I do a save here, it's going to show me down here I can create epic. And from here, I'm going to create an epic. And this is what I kind of like about this. Is all in platform, right? You can, like you say, I could use the normal application, or I could stay kind of in this portal view. Of course, now I have my epic, right? Let's look at my epic. Here's my epic, a Scrum type, right? So this is a route that goes idea, demand, project off to epic, right? So it kind of depends, again, I'm kind of showing the variations of workflows here. So this one here, I go back, I can look at this one, and let's do it by voted. Okay, this one again in backlog, and let's do this final one here. Gives a little time to have a discussion after. So this one too, I'm going to go right from, this is an example of, say for instance, you got the more advanced funding model, you're actually using funding. And your strategy says funding particular types of strategies, and those strategies fund epics, right? I guess they even could fund higher. I guess you could fund features, but maybe you fund epics. So depending on how you do your model, this may be, I'm not going to go through a demand pipeline, investment decision, all the cost plans and all that, because I have a different funding type of a model. I'm using funding itself. Is I'm going to run idea straight into an epic. That's this use case. Again, what we saw before, right? I tied it out to a business app, right? I've got a couple people to notify. This is the Safe Portfolio Manager is probably collaborating with me as an example, right? On getting this fleshed out, and there might be a lot more information we have in this, right? But eventually I'm going to create the task. And we're going to go to a safe epic. So look at the safe epic. Here's the epic, right? And I'd require a portfolio here, right? So maybe to save the record, I require a portfolio. And I'm going to show you what this looks like here too. I'm going to impersonate the safe manager here. Yeah, safe portfolio manager. And this is like example, if you're looking at safe and safe board, so here's the safe epic, right? Another, again, this is back to the platform views of things, right? So the safe epic we created, right? So, here's an example, right? Running through it. Again, depending if you want to stay in this route, if you want to take on the route, right? But this is back to the use cases right here we had. This is the impersonation. Back to our use case in terms of your flow model, right? And it really is a lot to do with, go up back to, sorry, your routing, right? So if you're going to route directly to Agile, if you're going to route via demand, right? If you're going to say, I may still go Agile, but I want to do here. I want to take this route. And before I jump out, I'll do the final DM Manager dashboard. So again, you can filter based on categories or states. If you have a lot of categories, you can already filter on the categories, and you can jump out, and these are drillable. These are the amounts that converted, date ranges, top vote ideas, the intake, what type of categories are coming in. You can see things over time. Of course, then you have analysis, right? It tells you, this is using some PA metrics. It's telling you ideas open over time, the average age, when they're being converted. I can go look over the month and say, what is my conversion rate? I see one of my jobs isn't running right. I'm missing data. But I can look at records, right? I can jump down, look at quarters, look at my records count. I can see by type, by area, I can look at the values. So if you're doing any type of trending, analysis, analytics, all that's available in this dashboard. But I think from just a general purpose is like, well, what ideas coming in? We can see stuff that's been submitted. That's kind of like the first state. What's been submitted, who owns it, who's it submitted by. You might have a portfolio. You might have other information available in this list view versus, say, going over and managing it in this view here, right? By the way, two ways to manage it. It's up to you how you want to route it. But the key thing here is decision-making on how you're going to do an intake. So it's, like I said, it's shifting from the old way of idea to demands, kind of the single cycle, to, hey, I want an idea, and it could create a lot of types of records. So we're kind of freeing the structure up for you. So with that, Charles, I guess we just let's just open up for discussion.
All right, great. Well, thank you as always, Scott. That was a really great overview. All right, so at this time, I'll open up the floor for any questions from the customers on the call. If you have any questions that you have right now, you can unmute yourselves and then ask Scott about what he presented, or if you have just some questions in general, that'd be great. If you wanted to chat it through, I can also respond to the chat window and then ask those questions on your behalf. So definitely don't be shy. What questions do you guys have?
Hey, this is Sarah. So one of the challenges that we are facing is, and we're not on Parish yet, so that may change, but you have the idea come in, it's converted to a demand, it's sent out to the Agile team to do the work on it. But our stakeholders want some kind of visibility into where the process is at. Like basically once it becomes a demand, it's just kind of flat there. And, we've connected it back to the epics and the stories, but they're wanting to see more of a timeline on what's accomplished, what's still left to do, that kind of thing. And we've tried creating dashboards. It's a little more challenging trying to have it in the portal, but I don't know if y'all looked at that at all.
So you're talking roadmap, right? Kind of like
yeah,
a roadmap.
yeah.
So that is coming out next release. If I stop sharing for a minute, you can keep asking questions. I'm going to see if I can bring up a visual of that. I might be able to share a quick visual, but a road mapping is being added in Quebec. And let me see if I can get a quick picture of it. Yeah, are there any other questions, by the way, as we're kind of running through this one?
So far, I don't see any in the chat. Anyone else have another question while he's about to answer Sarah's question? Okay, go ahead for it, David.
So when you talk about a roadmap feature, I know you're going to show us here in a minute, but is this going to be only around idea, or is this going to be something that's like we can actually then put on the portal, be downloadable, something that can be sent? Does it have kind of all the normal ServiceNow full-blown functionality?
Yeah, I'm sharing right here. This is the first visual I've seen in the roadmap, right? So it's the ability to link strategies back to execution, right? So you may have different strategies that point to specific initiatives, right? And these initiatives are on a roadmap, and these initiatives are drillable. Like I could click on this box and go into and look at what's being supported against that initiative and keep drilling down to and get a visual, right? You'll see on here, I've got the name of it. I got the funding of the value amount, right? I've got the owner of it, right? So benefits and costs are all included in there. So again, this is just, I'm getting the first render of this thing, is the roadmap. This is Rev 1 of this. It's to support, if I go back to the other map I had, we talked about at the top here, this level here. This is where road mapping is going to show up, but it's taking all the data up here. Right? The purpose of it basically is to give you visualization of alignment to strategy. So again, it's drillable, right? You can look at the linkages, you can do the tracking, you can see where the funding is. And by the way, this is totally new. This isn't an extension of some of the workbench or something like that. This is being created new. You'll see the visual of this is different. It's going to be in Seismic. We're just starting now to have some new releases in Seismic, which is terrific because it gives you a whole new ability to interact with the platform, much more visual, much better user experience. Right. But I'll have more detail on this as some of the, some of this starts to get fleshed out where I can share more with you. But I want to let you know that that's a very common ask on the visualization. It's not just the visualization and the sharing of it, because you can do investment portal today, right? You can see that. But this is a more detailed view, a dynamic view. It's drillable and holds a lot more information. Hope that helped a little bit.
Thank you.
Great. Other question?
Is anyone have today intake where you're using IDEA, the more traditional IDEA to demand? You haven't looked at IDEA portal yet? Because there is a migration process. It's in the docs, because we extend some tables, we add the category table. So there is kind of a migration process from the old, very simple form of IDEA to demand to basically introducing the IDEA portal. So again, it's New York is what we're first introduced, and there's some notes in there. So if you're looking to convert, you want to introduce the IDEA portal, you want to go look at the docs, because there's a little bit of setup. It's kind of like not quite as complex as it was when we did Agile 1 to Agile 2, but there is a few technical things that someone's going to want to look at as when you do your initial setup. It's primarily category setup is the biggest thing.
Jacob, did you have a question?
Yeah, real quick. So we are actually kind of just early on in our implementation of ITBM. We're just kind of trying to architect it out right now. And we are trying to debate between, having an IDEO portal versus something as simple as a IDEA intake form. Is that just something that is typically done through the service catalog, on our service portal, if that's the route that we in fact wanted to take to create IDEA?
You could do that. You could use the old IDEA service portal route. That's one way. I guess I'd also ask from a concept of deflection. Initially, IDEA, as you think about, before it was kind of the innovation concept, initially IDEA was a way to deflect a lot of asks. You accept the ideas that you want to act on. So
Right.
prioritization, et cetera. So quite often I ask customers, okay, if you get 100 ideas, how many of those ideas are you going to move through the pipeline into demand? If the answer is 50, which means you're doing some level of deflection, then I say that makes sense. If you're moving all 100 to a demand, my statement there is going to be, why don't you use, I'll show you, the demand self-service form, right? Create new.
Right.
So instead of even entertaining IDEA, because sometimes IDEA can, I think customers were thinking, well, IDEA creates demand, so therefore I have to use IDEA. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to start with the simple demand intake process, but you want to roll it out to a little bit broader audience, like this is an idle form, right? Anyone who's idle can do this. It's not required that you have to be a demand manager. If you're doing kind of annual planning and you want, hey, business unit A to put in 50 demands because you're going to work on them, this is a self-service view. And this is a configurable form, right? You can add whatever additional information you want. Maybe there's a portfolio selection or a business unit function or something like that. This is a way to simply say, hey, I want to give the businesses a simple way to create something for me. And it's a demand, it's not an idea. Because if you're creating 100 ideas and those 100 ideas get converted to 100 demands, then what's the point of the idea? It's kind of like, it's just a lot.
Right.
It's not necessary. But if you're looking at innovation as a concept, that's where I kind of tell customers, before you go down that route, if you're just starting, keep it simple. If you really don't have a way to introduce this to the broader audience, it's kind of like baby steps, crawl, walk, run. I would recommend, get it started simple, then begin to understand how you would route something. What does this process look like for you? How would you begin to introduce innovation? If you have different routes, how does it happen? So this, most customers don't even know this exists. The self-service form, they don't know it exists, but it's in the self-service, like ideas in self-service. You could just use this way.
Okay, so there is a demand self-service form, and then there is also an IDEA one as well.
I believe there's an idea on the initial service portal. I think that might still exist out there. If it doesn't, you can usually just create your own. I mean, it's really easy to do and just have that, because quite often what customers will do is they have their own service portal. They have a lot of stuff on there, service requests and all sorts of stuff. They like to have a little section that says, hey, have an idea, or I've seen some customers actually take this kind of type of form and embed it in a service portal. So in other words, the business can say, hey, I'm not going to really do an idea. I just literally want to create a demand. I use this form to create a demand. Yeah. Kind of depends how you learn about it. Yep.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions? Angela, do you have one?
I'm curious about the categories, setting those up. Has anyone done that and run into challenges in deciding what categories to create?
So I'll give you a use case that I just got off the phone with about half an hour ago. A very, very large company that they want category to represent their portfolios. And I was like, okay, and they've got hundreds. I'm like, okay, so when a customer comes in, or, a user comes in, someone in the community wants to create and they want to do a category, the purpose of it is to route. And again, you can create a workflow if you wanted to route, because I know we do that internally at ServiceNow. Our categories route to a particular assignment group, and you can add that to the form. Like the assignment is, you see, I've configured, remember I mentioned I configured the form a bit. You can add assignment group to the form, and category could route to that. But they were talking about creating hundreds, and you can create these are nested. Like if I go new, I can say, new, and I can pick the parent, right? And so I could start to nest. And I was like, well, okay, you got to be really careful how when a person comes in, if you know for sure that this person is going to know what the business unit is and what the portfolio is, because that's how they understand the architecture, that's fine. But I would say keep it as simple as possible and have it inside the form itself, have the idea manager decide where it belongs. In other words, keep the categories simple. I would say you could have a couple layers. I think they were proposing like 5 layers. I'm like, oh boy, you're kind of torquing it up a bit. I would say try to keep it as flat as you can, and then have the major area demand manager say, hey, I own this large area for product development. It gets routed to these things, right? It belongs to portfolio A or portfolio B.
Thank you.
Yep. And it is a separate table too, by the way. It's a separate categories is it's a many-to-many separate table. It doesn't right now carry forward, but with some creative configuration, I'm sure you could carry category forward, because their idea was to carry the category forward and have that determine the portfolio with a, with a business rule. I'm like, okay, you could configure that. But I'm thinking, talk about, and I would say, if you think about ourselves, ServiceNow, if I go to our ServiceNow, let's see if I go to community, and if I'm logged in here or not, and I'll look at ours. This is how we do intake. If you're not familiar with it, I definitely recommend, I'm not signed in here, let's see. Okay, come on. Sorry about that. I normally get logged in here. So idea portal here, right? This is our ServiceNow idea portal, right? You've got 4,000 ideas out there right now, right? And this is what I was recommending as you think about the categories. Look at our categories. There's a lot, right? And you'll see a couple nested down here as you start working down, right? If you're going to do something for ITBM, I think we have ITBM. I think it's under project portfolio management. Yeah, it's project portfolio management. Yeah. So under ours, we have, if you have an idea to demand financials, et cetera, it's nested in here. This is where you can, like I know here as an example, if I was to create as a customer, create an idea for demand, I know who it gets routed to because there's a workflow behind it. I also happen to know that we have SLAs against it. So depending on the state that it gets moved to, it triggers an SLA on response. So we've added, we've been we've used a platform and enhanced the Idea portal for ourselves internally to route to a particular assignment group, to a particular product manager, and then of course an SLA gets generated. But I was going to show you this most voted. Well, I'm guessing it's still the same, but it's create public roadmap. We have 462. Yep. So categories, I'd say categories is it can get unwieldy. I think I've heard there's an effort internally to maybe just do a little less of. There's an awful lot of stuff in here, right? So I think we're going to probably clean up categories in the future a bit. But it's really kind of your architecture, how you want to route it. I'd say keep it simple and let the idea managers, or maybe there's a group that kind of triage at a higher level and then route it to a portfolio or to a product line or to a business unit. That's probably what I'd do. Make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great. So we have about 12 minutes left. Any other questions or comments for Scott? All right. Going once. Going twice. I'm all about giving time back to the day if you feel like everything's been covered here. Scott does a very thorough job. So I just want to, again, thank you so much, Scott, for covering this. Looks like, yep, everyone's responding back. Everything was good. So we'll have a copy of the PowerPoint deck after the call. I think also too, Scott, did you share like demo environments with everyone on the call?
No, that was just for internal.
Oh,
no, I sent you the PDF to share out. That is a public share.
Okay, perfect. No, that's great. We'll send that out and the recording of this call after this meeting. And then also too, I'll send out a survey so that you guys can provide feedback and then let us know if there's other areas or even deeper level topics. If you want to see us go even further into this topic, just let us know. We'll try to line that up within the next couple of quarters around ideation. So I appreciate you all so much for attending this office hour. Thank you, Scott. I'll give you guys back 10 minutes of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.